People will be outraged when they hear about this, but they should probably rush to the gas stations and fill up their tanks while prices are still relatively low. And this all due to the fact that national supplies of all oil-based fuels, petroleum, including gasoline, diesel, and heating oil, have been depleted and may run out in less than a month. Well, depending on which resource you're listening to. Now, according to a recent letter issued by the Energy Information Administration, there is growing concern about gas shortages and rising costs in the coming weeks. As we head into winter, folks, this is not a good sign. I hope everyone watching is prepared, or at the very least has been preparing. In fact, several areas are already facing supply shortages and witnessing price increases of up to 30% in a single week. The tendency is fast expanding throughout America, causing concern among government officials, industry executives, and refineries that are already working at full capacity. Many businesses are also in fear of the likelihood of absolutely going out of business for the fact that they can't have access to the fuels they need to do business. Still, it will be unable to meet the demand for the turmoil that will erupt across the country. Millions of people will be pushed over the brink if fuel costs double or triple from present levels. We already know that money is tight and paychecks are being stretched to their max. Now, this is only the starting of an extraordinary energy shortage, folks, and the fact that national energy sources are dwindling before winter even starts is very concerning. We do need to tie this to Russian sanctions on oil, but we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, we are going to reveal some alarming data, statistics, and projections. So stay tuned. And if you would, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Now let's get right into it. So Mansfield Energy has issued a code red notice on implementing fuel shortages that will affect the whole country in less than a few days. Now, the United States petroleum market is facing a nightmare situation with limited supplies on the Mississippi River, forcing more cargo to rail, truck, and a predicted rail strike. We still have a few folks out there who haven't agreed to the bargaining agreements, and a railroad strike is still possible, resulting in a huge increase in freight rates that is projected to continue. Prices are going to continue going up, folks. Inflation, whether the Fed wants to say that we are in a recession or not, the Biden administration, whatever the CPI reports may say, we all know the simple fact of the matter is everything costs more. Everything will continue to cost more. And if you want to call it a price hike, if you want to call it price fixing, if you want to call it inflation, call it what you want. But at the end of the day, you're going to need more money. Now, according to the Energy Information Administration, our national stockpiles of gasoline, diesel, and heating oil are at an alarming low level. It is possible that it will fall to zero by the end of the month. Now, the issue is worsening by the day. The EIA urged authorities to act quickly to avert a catastrophic collapse of energy stocks. And according to CNBC, the combination of low stocks and rising demand ahead of the winter is a formula for further higher costs to pour out throughout the country and strike customers who are already emptying their pockets every time they fill up. Now, according to EIA statistics, gasoline reserves have reached their lowest level since 2008, and since 1951, the United States diesel reserve has had never been this low. The EPA also stated that the issue isn't that refiners aren't attempting to increase output, but they've been running at 102.5% capacity since October. But the market was already stressed owing to the pandemic's forced suspension of numerous processing operations. And according to Tom Ketzer, global head of energy analysis at Opus, between now and the end of November, the federal government has been exporting enormous quantities of energy supplies, which cut into the United States to other nations since February, leaving our domestic reserves at critically low levels. Not a good sign. Now, if we do not make inventories and increase our inventory levels, the wolf will come knocking, and it will look like a huge, ugly disaster if it's a harsh winter. Folks, please make sure you are preparing for the storm that is coming. So gas prices have fallen this year, reaching a point of which perhaps maybe even 100 consecutive days in a row, according to some reports, boosting the government's approval rating. Nevertheless, with more than 70% of Americans considering rising costs as their top worry and 95% worried about fuel prices, the government is doing everything it can to keep prices low for the time being, or so they say. Unfortunately, analysts predict that this trend will not persist long. And in reality, prices are going to begin to rise again as gas shortages continue along the East Coast. So now is the moment to begin refilling our tanks and storing up on fuel while it is still available, and we can still afford it since it is quickly spinning out of control and it's not even winter yet. Now, likewise, fuel shortages are cascading along the East Coast. Now, according to local sources, gasoline terminals in the areas are running low on fuel as supplies decrease due to the global oil crisis. Despite the fact that the United States is a significant gasoline producer, much of the fuel produced on the Gulf Coast is shipped to outside markets, leaving the East Coast dependent on imports from other nations. Imports have declined significantly since the Ukraine conflict interrupted energy supply across Europe and diverted flows elsewhere. Currently, shipments of gasoline and blending materials entering New York are 25% lower than they were in November of last year. And according to Vortex, a Bloomberg data compilation, supplies in the New York Harbor region are at their lowest in a decade for this point of time in the year. Simultaneously, diesel prices are rising again, and shortages are spreading from coast to coast. And according to Andy Litt-Powell, president of Litt-Powell Oil Associates, LLC, the national average price for diesel today is $5.32 a gallon and is likely to rise another 15 to 20 cents in the next weeks. And according to Litt-Powell, diesel inventories in the New York and New England markets are in severe decline, having fallen by more than half since last year and reaching their lowest level since 1990. So according to Mike Steinhoek, executive director of the Soy Transportation Coalition, the Midwest is also witnessing a supply collapse, which is driving up expenses for farmers. Talking about food here, folks. The opinion among farmers is that fuel costs are detrimental to profitability. And in terms of supply, it appears that the districts most reliant on the Mississippi River are seeing the most difficulty. So a handful of farmers have stated that their diesel supply comes from a local seller on a daily basis. And the situation has deteriorated to the point that a major gasoline supply and logistics business has issued a warning about impending statewide fuel shortages. Mansfield Energy issued a warning that a gasoline crisis was emerging in the country, which might be caused by poor pipeline shipping economics combined with record low gasoline supplies are causing shortages in a variety of locations across the country. Other states expected to feel the same effects in the shortages in the coming weeks. And according to the company, these should include Maryland, Virginia, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina, stating that because conditions are rapidly developing and market economics are changing significantly each day, Mansfield is moving to alert level 4 to address market volatility. Mansfield said this in a press release. Now, Mansfield also said that they are shifting the Southeast code to code red, seeking 72-hour notice for supply wherever feasible to ensure fuel and freight can be obtained at economical levels. The business added that if people don't believe a gasoline scarcity is already disturbing, well, it's because they don't completely comprehend the turmoil that would erupt over the country if the diesel crisis increased, which we should be preparing for. With diesel sources dwindling, practically all of our trains, vehicles, and ships would cease operations, halting delivery of virtually everything we shop for and buy at our supermarkets and retail stores that is delivered by trains, trucks, and ships. So the idea that inventories might vanish in less than a month is a huge concern. So diesel is a fuel that powers the economy, and this was explained by Patrick DeHaan, head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy. Higher prices are certainly going to translate into more expensive goods, he said, since these higher fuel costs will be passed along to consumers. Now, he said, especially at the grocery store, the hardware store, and anywhere you shop for that matter. On top of everything else that's wrong, there's a heating oil shortfall and statewide natural gas deficit. Tom Klotz also stated that the diesel scarcity in the United States will exacerbate the worldwide lack of heating oil, which is now at its lowest position since 1982, despite the fact that we've added nearly 3.4 billion people in that same time period. So the distillate fuel scarcity also threatens to exacerbate inflation by making consumer products and heating costs even more costly. And this is his warning. Folks, do not ignore it. Households that use heating oil for space heating will pay hundreds of dollars more this winter than they did last, with prices expected to jump by roughly a third. According to the EIA's winter fuel outlooks, this was issued back in October, and our prediction for heating oil margins this winter considers current pricing measures influencing the U.S. distillate market, such as low stockpiles, low imports, and restricted refining capacity. And to add insult to injury, the agency stated that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is utilizing the federal government to make swift action to avert an impending wintertime domestic gas crisis. So for several months, the commission has admitted that the United States would not have enough natural gas to satisfy power supply demands in the case of a severe cold spell this winter. Now, in a letter to President Biden, Joseph Nolan, chief executive officer of Eversource Energy, stated that I am merely afraid that if we get a polar vortex or cold snap in the region, there would not be enough fuel for the electrical power generators in the area to deliver electricity for our consumers. Now, every source is around 20 days of supply in the tanks for emergencies, but all that means is that things might quickly deteriorate into a disaster. Now, we might have prevented this crisis if emergency measures had been implemented sooner, but today, only a miracle can turn things around. We should have built a lot more refining capacity during the last decade, but it wasn't our leaders' agenda at that time. So now we all pay the price. Needless to say, this will drive up consumer costs in the coming months because nearly everything we buy must be transported. This is an additional explanation as to why our level of living is deteriorating at such an alarming rate. Now, we've got a huge mess on our hands. The world's energy crisis will be with us for a long time, and millions of Americans will be driven off an economic cliff in the coming months if they are not prepared. Thank you guys for watching. I do look forward to hearing from you in the comment section, and please share this video with your friends and family if you think it will be helpful and beneficial. You guys take care, be safe. I'll see you on the next one. Bye.